Hello, and welcome to another game that I don't know how or why I came to own. This game is Blinding Dark. According to the Steam page, Blinding Dark is a first-person adventure horror game with puzzle elements. At first glance on the Steam page, to me it looks a bit similar to, say, Amnesia or Outlast with combat thrown in. It sounds like it might be promising to those who enjoy those types of games, although I personally couldn't really get into them because they bored me. But whatever. Let's give Blinding Dark a shot. The first thing I notice is that this is a Unity engine game. Of course, with this being an indie title, it's not very surprising, but it is a bit concerning. A lot of games I see use Unity are bare bones, bland, or have bad performance. Actually loading the game up though, it doesn't look half bad. It seems to run well, especially compared to the last pile of shit that I made a video on. Initially, this seems like it's going to be a very decent game. That sort of changes for me later on, but I'll get to that when I get to that. For now, let's continue with how the game looks. Visually, it's nothing too impressive, but it does an okay job at conveying a creepy atmosphere overall. There's a lot of weird graphical inclusions or oversights that bug me whenever they pop up, but it doesn't really take me out of the game. Although, admittedly, I wasn't too into the game to begin with. Minor things like this, or this, or some weird error that I got when I first loaded up the game where a lot of the light sources weren't rendering in for me. This was especially true for me during when I can only surmise is the second half of the game, but all of these aren't anything too horrible, especially for an indie title. Sure, things like this would be damning if a big developer did it, and a lot still do, but I'll personally give smaller developers a pass since they are just that. Since I mentioned the darkness a second ago, I want to bring up the title of the game, Blinding Dark. It's sort of misleading in the beginning of the game. I mean, it's dark and I didn't have a lot of light sources, probably because of the bug I had, but in the beginning, in the house, there's sort of a strange reflective property that's seen on a lot of the props and geometry. Plus, it's not even really that dark. I could see without having to use the torch. I mean, it was dark, but not blindingly dark. Anyways, the surmised second half is a bit better, especially whenever my light sources aren't rendering in. It was dark. I couldn't see anything in front of me without using the torch's ability, which seemed to be the only light source that was rendering in for me. At this point though, I figured that there was something wrong, and I looked up a video and saw that they had light sources, so I restarted the game and voila! It worked. It actually looked pretty good too with all the lights rendering in. So overall, the game doesn't look too bad, and like I said, it has some issues, but it's not something that couldn't be fixed, right? Oh, well then. So, we'll probably never see an update again. Let's move on to the audio. The only decent thing I've heard in this game was the guy reading the journals.
I don't know where I am, and more worryingly, who I am. What happened? All I know is that I'm in some kind of abandoned manor, and I have a strange mask stuck on my face. I better start looking around for clues.
Even then, it's nothing spectacular. It's just a guy reading journals. There's no character interaction between the protagonist and other NPCs. The music is generic whorehouse music, and even when it isn't sounding completely forgettable, the audio cuts in and out constantly. The enemies sound bad. The gun audio is pow. And really, that's it. There's nothing really here that sounds amazing or even really good. The only thing that's memorable is the main character reading his journals. And that's bad. Well, let's tackle what's probably the most important aspect to any game. The gameplay. The gameplay is a mixed bag of confusion. I mean, the controls themselves aren't confusing, and neither is the gameplay in general. What's confusing is how bare bones it is, and why the platforming is more enjoyable than the shooting. One of the first few weapons you get is a revolver. I mean, it's a cheap piece of shit, but it's there. The gun is inaccurate, and it takes too many shots to kill enemies, whereas the platforming was actually the best part of the game. And I hate platforming. But it sort of reminded me of when I played 8 grillion hours of Garry's Mod. Now Garry's Mod scares me more than this game. Speaking of which, This game isn't scary. Anyone who says that this game is scary is a pussy. This is less scary than Fear, except Fear was a good game. This game relies solely on startling the player. Jump scares, the thing that makes up most modern horror movies and horror games nowadays. Sure, you might jump or flinch when an enemy is suddenly very loud right in your face, but that's because it's startling. If someone blasts an air horn in an office, people are going to get startled. But if you have a virus outbreak and people die, then you'll be scared. Now, don't misconstrue what I'm trying to say here. I don't want any more fucking zombie games, goddammit, but there's a difference between someone yelling loudly and some sort of impending doom that sends chills down your spine, and this game just has screams. People aren't going to be afraid of Two-Head Man, Tentacle Lady, or the love child of the Wolverine and Sub-Zero. They just aren't spooky. At best, the atmosphere is okay, but the actual threat in the game is boring. If the game was actually a bit more like when my game was bugged and darker, where it was hard to see down the dark alleyway and you don't know what was going on or what was waiting for you, then the game might be better, but as it stands, the only enemy that gave me any sort of sense of dread was Gigas, and that's because I didn't know what it was. It was an unknown to me, and the fact that this unknown was chasing me made me want to run. Now, again, don't misconstrue. I don't think that a good horror game makes you run, but makes you want to run. All of the enemies in Blinding Dark, so far, have been explained what they are and how to defeat them. Shoot this guy, projectiles don't work on Tentacle Head Lady, use axe, use crystal thing. They don't have any mystery behind them, and consequently they don't scare me. So this is a bad shooting game, a very okay platformer, and a bad horror game. But what else? Oh yeah, interactivity. The game doesn't have a lot of interactivity to it. I mean, you just run around, pick up gems and shit, shoot some guys, and there you go. The game would have gone a long way if it had more to do in it. The Amnesia games, Penumbra games, and even Soma counteract this by having the player search around by interacting with the environment and finding clues and objects that help you progress. This game doesn't have any of that. I mean, you find stuff, but you might have to push a desk out of the way to get it. You climb stuff, but you have to use the 2 boxes in an empty room. It's insulting to call this a puzzle game, and it's insulting to compare this game to the likes of Amnesia or Penumbra. And even though I'm not a big fan of that style of game, I can tell you that it's still much better than Blinding Dark. Anyways, that's pretty much the gameplay. It's boring at best and bad at worst. When I think about this game, I remember that statistically that this is someone's favorite game, and that I'm saying that this game is a boring pile of shit. I'm sorry, but this game is just boring as hell. I couldn't even finish it. I just don't have it in me to continue on. This is as far as I'm going to get into the game, and this is as far as I want to review it. So, just to recap overall, the game is mildly acceptable in some parts, boring in most, and bad in a few. There's a demo if you want to try it out, but this game isn't worth the $10 it charges. Get a better game like Amnesia, Soma, or Penumbra. Hell, get a game like Eldritch. It's a much better game overall. Just, please, spend your money on something better.